Hello, everybody, and welcome to Viking Explains. I am joined here by my friend Bones, and
Hello.
and
You put that was my cue.
okay, that's fair. I kind of did, I kind of did lean into that. Yeah. Well, you know what? Fuck it, leave it in.
We'll get it in post.
This is the first episode of hopefully many, many, many to come, where Icelandic Viking, explains some of my culture, my heritage, and Norse mythology, the religion, and so on and so forth. Now, why exactly am I a Viking? Well, I'm in Viking reenactment. If you don't know what that is, I might explain later, but for the time being, just Google it. I am of the old faith, and I'm here to teach. You are an Englishman.
That I am.
That you
So,
are.
yeah, we have somewhat interconnected history with the Vikings, in a sense.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. That's one way to say that. Interconnected, indeed. Do you have any idea what this first episode is going to be about?
I heard something about heathens.
So, heathen. The different terminology of heathen and pagan. Heathen and Viking. Now, I am personally very extremely offended and scorned. I am very scorned, Bones.
And pray tell, why are you scorned? Because from what I understand, heathen is more so like used in a sort of derogatory sense.
Yeah, exactly. And like in this modern world, when you say heathen, what comes to mind?
Is generally I associate with a person of a certain faith calling somebody a heathen as a person who breaks the tenets of their faith. It almost feels like a less intense heretic.
That is actually a very great way to explain that. Now, the reason why I don't like that explanation is because this word was stolen from Old Norse. And Old Norse, in case you didn't know, Old Norse is the language that the Vikings spoke. And yes, for all you history buffs, I'm going to keep calling it the Vikings, even though I know blah blah blah, all that stuff. You know, it's technically it's just the Scandinavian people, it's just the Nordic people, blah blah blah. Viking is just a thing that some of them did, so on and so forth. Most people are familiar with the Vikings, and I will just keep saying Vikings for sake of ease of use, I guess, like layman's terms. So yeah, Old Norse is what the Vikings spoke, and that is practically Icelandic, which is where I'm from. Like everyone in Iceland is actually taught Old Norse. We're taught the Edda, the Snorra Edda, and I mean I speak Old Norse. It's not really difficult. It's just you take a couple of phrases here, mix them up, some weird words, and that's it. That's literally it. So yeah, the word heathen is stolen from Icelandic / Norse by the English vocabulary. Like it's a trend. They stole so many words are correlated from are taken from Old Norse, and by as a result, or well, by proxy, Icelandic, I guess. And yeah, I can tell. Like I can literally tell the words you guys have in English. A lot of it, maybe not, majority. It's not a majority, but there's a lot of it that I can just tell. Hey, that kind of sounds like this in my language. I wonder where they got that from.
Well, I mean, have you heard of the description of the English language not being a real language, but several languages in a trench coat?
Yeah, like the old Latin and then French and all that in a trench coat. That is a very true description. That is a very true description, indeed. Now, what is the actual word that I keep saying that is stole? The heathen. Well, here comes the history lesson. Heathen is taken from the word heathen. And heathen is a verb. You are heathen. To be heathen. It translates literally to pious, to be a man of faith, specifically towards the old gods, to be religious, to be pious.
So is it effectively being like Christian in that sense, like in how you would use the word?
Yes, absolutely. That's why I want to start a petition to bring back my damn word. Because heathen, it just means to belong to this religion, and the religion being Norse mythology. You know, Odin and Thor and all those guys. So Christians, of course, like Vikings being not just bloodthirsty, berserking, hulking monsters, you know, being merchants and traders and businessmen. We really liked shiny things, and we figure we take the path of least resistance. Do you want to go into battle and possibly lose all your men and half your shit, and then not gain enough out of it? You know? It's not worth it. It's better to just, you know, make good trade. So, well, either way, battle or trading or colonizing even, or settlements, I guess, settling. Either way, the languages are intermingled, like the old Anglo-Saxons, you know, in England, they, or at least the Saxons, they would learn Old Norse. Some of them would actually learn Old Norse before long, and so would Vikings learn their language as well. I wouldn't exactly call it English, because it wasn't English yet, I guess. At least not as we know it today. And their men of Christ would associate this word heathen. Oh yes, these heathens, like in Icelandic or in Norse, you could bend the word, because we have, like, the way that we learn the language, the way that the language works is some of the words you can just bend. So it's heathen, and you got a couple of heathenka.
So is that sort of regional dialect, or is that just sort of flexible throughout the areas it's spoken then?
Yeah, throughout the entire language. It's so like that's like the verbs and the nouns. It can all be bent in a certain way, just as the same as the word. The nouns. Every noun has a gender, male, female, or an it, I guess. So, you know, for example, in Norse / Icelandic, noun, chair. A chair would be a he. You know, a chair would be a male, whereas a desk would be an it, and a gift, a literal gift, gjöf, would be a she. You know, so on and so forth. You know, nouns have gender, and most of the words you can bend. So yeah, you know, to be heathen, and there is one heathengi and many heathengar, and so yeah, like the Saxons would learn Old Norse, and they would associate that word to be, you know, men of faith, men of the old gods, and of course, being Christians, they wouldn't necessarily call that a good thing. So eventually, they would pronounce it heathen. Well, at least somewhere along the way, the word got pronounced heathen. I don't know exactly when that happened, and that got associated with anyone who wasn't Christian. It just meant you are not a Christian and you must be purged, or something like that. And you know, like, for example, today, mostly, I would say that I'm a pagan, because that sounds like a nicer of the two words. And paganism, that's the thing about that. Like, technically, I'm not a pagan. I'm a heathen, and I would like to take that word back to its original meaning. So instead of always having to explain, oh yeah, I'm a pagan, I belong to Norse mythology and blah, in case you don't know what that is, it's blah and blah, I could just say I'm heathen, and you would immediately know what that entails.
On a similar note, it's kind of odd, just as a side tangent, that a lot of old faiths don't really have the religious sort of title associated with them. Like the belief in the old Egyptian gods doesn't really have a neat title, nor do like the Greeks or the Romans. You just refer to it as a certain pantheon. It's like all been erased, like in the case of heathen, where it's been sort of like twisted.
Exactly. I mean, they do have words. For example, like Greek mythology, that's Hellenism, and you're a Hellenistic if you belong to that religion. But you can't just say I'm Hellenistic or I belong to Hellenism, and people would immediately associate that with Greek mythology instead of saying mythology, because people just don't know that, and that's what I'm here to change. I want to educate people. I actually got I did talk about this exact subject the other day, and I was asked this question: can you be religious in mythology? Like, is mythology a religion? Yes! That's just a word used to like belittle a religion. Like, oh, you have all these fantastical stories and elements of all kinds of different kinds of magics and these characters, and that's all a myth, that's all mythical, henceforth mythology. It might not be precisely to belittle anyone, but it does take away that element, because people still are of that faith. People still believe in that stuff,
I believe like some of where, like another thing that has happened to these religions and stuff is that a lot of the stuff is now viewed through the scope of entertainment. It's like a lot of what people think when they're thinking of like the Greek Minotaur isn't really the classic Minotaur, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Of a literal man with a bull's head. It becomes like the whole full, like almost a perfect mesh of a man and a bull, like cloven hooves, full fur.
Yeah.
And not necessarily in a labyrinth for the reason why the beast is in the labyrinth.
Exactly. Oh, I mean, I'm fine with that, to be honest. Even if it's like, for example, like these new games. Well, I say new, but relatively new games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla and like the God of War, new God of War games. Like, I am fine with that. A lot of the iterations are completely bonkers, but it is for the sake of entertainment, and I'm not above that. Like the Marvel, the superhero Marvel company, the taking Norse mythology and DC taking the Greek mythology. Hell, I mean, there's also Greek gods in Marvel, and I think vice versa. I'm not sure. I'm fine with that. Like, as long as you know that it's not actually representative. Like, you've seen plenty of iterations of Jesus, right? You've seen plenty of, like, people making fun of Jesus, or, like, suddenly Jesus appears and it's just, like, a white dude with long hair and a beard in a robe. Or it's a satire and he just pulls out an AR-15 and starts gunning everybody down. Like,
I think most people have also had the friend who has the beard and longer hair and thus earns the name Jesus.
Yeah, and I've been called Jesus plenty of times in my time. That's for certain. Yeah. So I mean, of course I'm fine with that. Otherwise, I would just be a hypocrite. As long as you realize that it's not the actual source material. To be heathen is to belong to the religion of Norse mythology. But that is a related question. Norse mythology. Like I told you, these religions, these faiths have names. what is the name of Norse mythology? What can you tell me about Norse mythology?
I was going to say that, as I sort of said earlier, to most people, myself included, I don't actually know the proper name for like the classical Norse mythology. It is just, or like religion, it's generally just referred to as like either Norse or just comes under the branch term of pagan, which is pretty vague.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you have the one that I'm constantly hearing about, the Wicker or Wiccan in America. Like that's like more witches and witchcrafts, and that's being blanket term. Like it's an umbrella term. Paganism, that is. Like, oh, those witches in America are pagan. Like, oh, those guys in the East are pagan. Or like those. Yeah, I mean, the word pagan itself has the same connotations as a heathen.
Yeah, I would say it's almost sort of associated with those people who are chanting around a campfire in the forest, sort of thing. That's sort of like the derogatory image that people have when they say pagan. It's like, yeah, pagan religion generally isn't seen as that serious at all.
Yeah, it's just made fun of. Like about Jesus, like every time you see an iteration of Jesus on screen, you like at least some part of me, personally, goes into like, oh shit, what are the Christians going to think about this? You know, like, but when somebody sees an iteration of Thor or Loki, I feel like most people wouldn't even bat an eye. Like, oh, okay, cool, just take it at face value. Like, hell, even just a generic Viking, because holy shit, the amount of shit that Hollywood and just mainstream media gets absolutely just ridiculously wrong about Vikings is so much. Like, it wouldn't bother me, but it's like, it's a comical, to a comical degree, how much people don't understand the Vikings.
Is the fact that it can be very hard to convince somebody that horned helmets weren't a thing.
Exactly. Oh my god, fucking hell. Like, you grow up seeing the horned helmets iterations, and that's just, it's ridiculous. It's, horned helmets weren't a thing. Like, every time you see somebody like dressing up as Vikings, all covered in fur and like super like massive amounts of leather and horns on their helmets, and yeah, they speak like this. I am Sven. Like, come on. Quite frankly, insulting.
It does make me think, 'cause like these people I've spoken to, they've worn like motorcycle helmets or like construction site helmets. It's like those are unwieldy and uncomfortable enough.
Yeah,
Stick 3 massive horns on it.
exactly. Well, I mean, I guess then you could argue that, oh well, I mean, there did exist all kinds of different helmets throughout history. I mean, why is horned helmets so difficult to believe? I mean, yeah, they had like the Roman helmets, the Greek helmets. Like there were many different iterations of helmets where they had extra shit on them, and it was cumbersome, and it didn't serve much of a purpose aside from like showing rank or being decorative. I mean, yeah, you could say that, but it's just, it is a fact, as far as we know, and we've known for decades and decades, that Vikings specifically did not have any horns on their helmets.
I would say also the other note with the sort of Viking, stereotypical Viking head helmet style is with a lot of these like ceremonial pieces, which they are, when they got something jutting out your helmet, they're like center line on the top, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
For the most part.
Like I said, we are not professionals, but
I am certainly not.
yeah, I'm not a professional. Archaeological finds of helmets. That is, like, one of them had horns, and that was like pre-medieval, like pre-Viking era, and it was massive horns, like brass horns, by the way. It wasn't animal horns or anything. It was like these massive opera singer level horns, and that is the most likely a ritual helmet, not used in battle. And yeah, I know a lot of people there's this joke amongst like the archaeological community, like this historical community, that like every time we find something that immediately doesn't seem super practical, we just go to yes, ritual. But to be fair, if I remember correctly, that specific helmet, the thickness of it was just way too thin. Like it was absolutely unpractical to wield in a battle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I know the one you mean.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining when these things are like so poorly balanced, you'd like lean over to the side and your helmet would start tipping. It's
Oh,
just like
they can. Like, yeah. Sorry.
it's just like when it's looking at these Viking helmets, it's like the sort of thing of like, would somebody in real life deal with the impracticalities of this for whatever reason? Of like to look intimidating, I guess is the argument.
Right.
I don't really see somebody sort of putting up with the downsides of it.
I just quickly did research now. It's called the. No, I don't know how to pronounce that because this is probably fucking Swedish. God, I hate the Swedish. Oslo. Huh. Okay. Never mind. It's called the Gerbundu or Gerbundu. Probably Gerbundu. My Norwegian is very bad. I'm not even gonna try. But yeah,
I believe I've also found that word and I am intimidated by it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's actually a very nice looking helmet, and like I said, we have only found like one of that or two actually. There's another one who's slightly worse made. It's slightly less impressive, I would say. But throwing shade to the armorer who made that. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, no, we did not have horns on our helmets. That's so yeah. I've talked about heathen. I would like to take back heathen.
So would that be pronounced like simply as heathen, or would you use one of these
yeah, let's
different
not get
pronunciations?
caught up on ceremony here. Like, for example, for future reference, dear viewer, if you still are listening to this, I doubt anyone is, but if you are, I will not be talking about any of the old gods, places, things, or any of the words in my pronunciation. For example, you would say Loki, I would say Loki, because that's what his name is, Loki, the god of mischief. Or you would say Heimdall or Valhalla. I would say Heimdallur or Valhall, because that's what it is. That's one of the things that was talking about the bending of words. The Valhall. I will get into that later, but for quick refresher, Valhall is the palace, the place, the hall of Odin, right? That's Valhall, and the word Valhall can be bent, so it would be in its most neutral state just called Valhall, but then you would probably on the battlefield hear the Vikings talk about it as in you want to go to Valhallar, till Valhallar. So that's the bending of the word. That's how it's pronounced in that specific context, and that's kind of what people picked up on. So it's called Valhalla now. And so yeah, I will not be talking about this in my pronunciation because I'm not a prat or a prude or a snob. I mean, I realize that none of you will be able to pronounce it anyway. So yeah, just heathen is good, Valhalla, yeah, it's fine, whatever. I don't like it particularly because people don't know about the entire, history of it. But I can't fault them for that. So yeah, heathen. What is the name of Norse mythology? What do you think it is?
I'll go with heathenism because I'm using plain English terms.
I mean, yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it?
I don't know. Rolls off the tongue. As I sort of said before, it's like with a lot of religions which aren't practiced anymore, we don't sort of have the same equivalent terminology. It's a bit like how with a lot of places, like we just refer to any religious like building nowadays, you just refer to it as a temple. Like we don't really have the equivalent word, and we don't have like the equivalent words for like it would just be like a priest as a catch-all term for any religion, which isn't really practiced today. There's a lot of things which we just lost specific words for, and we just use just placeholders sort of thing. So I sort of struggle to sort of see what the specific words would be.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of placeholder names. Funny you should mention that temple. Like, yeah, technically, so the word temple in Norse would be hof. H-O-F.
Off.
Hof.
So it almost sounds like you got a bit of a C or a K in there.
Nope.
So go one more time.
Hof.
Off.
It's like, okay, the word hobble or like hoffle. You know, you pronounce the H. You know, hof.
Yeah, hof.
Yeah, hof. Yeah.
I think that also is like part of the reason why I feel like some of these words get mutated, like when you're talking about like heathen and like Valhalla, isn't just how we learn it, it's the general like rules of pronunciation within your own language.
True.
You then end up applying to another person's language just because that's how you naturally speak. And unless it's somebody who is aiming to become fluent, yeah, they end up just using their own rules.
I mean, yeah, like I said, that's fair. That is fair because your vocal cords literally aren't trained to speak a certain way other than the one that you learned. I mean, you can train yourself to learn other languages and other ways of pronouncing things, but
also, I believe like some of the strongest examples are things like some of the like various Asian languages, like Vietnamese. I know some of the pronunciations are very specific, and you can meet like if you change what almost can sound very similar to an English speaker, can then end up meaning very different things.
Yeah, I run into that all the time. Like both in my own language, as in like native English speakers try to say things in my language, and I try to say things in other languages, and I feel like I'm saying the same damn thing, but I've maybe repeated the same phrase twice. And the second time, which I felt was the same phrase, I apparently said something entirely different. Yeah, I relate to that. Oh yeah, shit. Hof. So that's literally just the name, not the name. That's literally just the word for a temple, and that's just a temple, Hof. However, that is what we called our place of worship. We had a specific place of worship, just like churches and chapels, and fuck, I honestly forgot what they call it in Islam.
A mosque.
Mosque, yes, mosques. Yeah, we have a place of worship, and we call it hof because that's just a word for temple. So there's no specific, like, not unless again I want to be a special snowflake with my own word because every other major religion has their own specific word for it. Instead of just calling it a temple, I would like for you to call it a hof. So it's a temple for my religion. But you don't have to do that. Like I said, I'm not a prude.
Out of interest, how prevalent are they in your country? Are there actually many like formally designated buildings for that?
No. Well, yes. So of course we have the old historical ones, but most of them have been converted to like museums at this point, and but I mean we still have like a few, like very unimpressive. So, like Iceland has always been rather unimpressive when it comes to anything like this, because most of the time it was Norway, maybe Denmark, that built these massive structures and like these very impressive, intricate things. Whereas Norway had all the wood. Norway had all the trees, all the forests, all the wood. You know what we had here in Iceland? Fucking nothing. Absolutely, like we had bushes. That's basically it. Like we had no form of flora. Well, maybe not no form, but like we had very limited resources here. So actually, it's kind of interesting the way that we built our houses here in Iceland is rather different from how they did it in Norway and Sweden. Maybe not all the time, but you will only see predominantly this type of housing here. It's called, so what would they do? You take a patch of earth, like say, I don't know, a square foot, right? A square foot of earth, just like grass and dirt, you know? You dig that out of the ground and you have like a square foot of earth, right? Then you would do so again and again and again until you have a wall. That's what we did. We made our houses out of literal dirt and earth. It's called torf, Torf, and it's a great insulator. It's a fantastic insulator. It doesn't rot. It doesn't smell too bad. It just smells like dirt, and it doesn't smell nothing. And it's very warm. It's very, like, honestly, it's very cozy. And actually, we still did that up until like the early 19th century, 20th century even, because Iceland was always like super behind on anything and everything until we suddenly weren't, and that's when we just kind of like shot forward. Whereas,
I suppose it's not all too different. Sort of like the principle behind the igloo is sort of just using a insulative material.
Yeah.
And as soon as you've got that heat trapped in, it doesn't really matter what you're using.
Exactly.
As you say, like these materials can be very good insulators.
Yes.
Hence why you have stuff like basements. That's basically relying on the insulative properties of just
the ground. Yeah. I mean, don't take this the wrong way, viewer, and think that just the bare ground is a good insulator. Don't sleep on the bare ground. That's actually very dangerous, because the earth will suck out your body heat, and that's not good. But like, yeah, it's the same. Like, yeah, igloos are actually great at insulating and trapping heat, because igloos are just ice, and ice is just, it's partially melted snow, and snow is just frozen water. Water is a great insulator. But see, the thing is about these mud, I guess, maybe not mud, but dirt houses, is that, like I said, we were still building them up until like the 19th century, and that's actually kind of the inspiration for dwarves who come out of the ground, and hobbit holes. And we're talking got his inspiration for a hobbit hovel, because it has the grass still on the roof. It's like, it's literally, you will, if you Google pictures of like traditional Icelandic Viking houses and stuff like that, you will just see a bunch of, it almost looks like just overgrown hills.
I suppose that only adds to the structure and insulation, really, doesn't it? So it's like no reason to get rid of it.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it still survived up until today. We have like quite a few of these structures still here, and that's because it's ingenious. It is ingenious with what you have and what you made off what you had. So there's that.
So do you know how quickly these sort of buildings take to make? Because obviously, even when you're using like normal timber, you've still got to process your wood into actual timber and then transport it to the location, and then the
Yeah,
sort of shaping of that is very different of that.
yeah,
So were these
because
houses a lot quicker to build then?
yes, well, it definitely doesn't require any prepping, I guess. I mean, you don't want like wet dirt. The best conditions are during the summer, of course, in a lot of grassland, and if you do that correctly, then voila, you depending on how big you want to make your estate, basically. Not to say we did have some wooden structures, but those are few and far between, and most of that wood was just imported from Norway. So yeah, I started talking about the temples called Hov. Yeah, and that's just temples for the old gods and stuff. I really did want to touch on the name of the religion because, like I said, instead of saying Norse mythology all the time, it is called. Do you want to hear what it's called?
Are we going to get a natural flavor, or are you going to hit us with the English flavor?
Both. Honestly, this time it's going to be both, but different. Holy shit! What the fuck am I saying?
You're going to hit me with it then. I feel like there's been a lot of build up.
I'll hit you with it. So it is called Ausatru.
I have not heard that before, like not even vaguely.
No, you
No,
haven't.
I don't think I've heard that.
No, that doesn't really surprise me. But Ausatru. Usually when I say anything like this, people try to mimic it, and I was kind of waiting for that.
I'll give it a go if it makes you feel easier. So
Yes.
Alsatrud.
Almost.
I'm kind of surprised that didn't survive. Okay, the spelling's not what I expected.
No.
But no, the pronunciation, I'm kind of surprised you didn't survive, or at least get survive in some form.
But it did.
In English.
It derives from the gods, Odin and Thor and all those guys, right? So they are a race of immortals, like a race of deities, gods, right? Basically anyone except for the humans are kind of immortal-esque, So humans are the only fucking mortals there are. And all the other races have, specific names. And what we would call the gods, there are actually two different types of the gods. There are two different races of the gods. And then there are other deities, other immortals, like you would probably recognize the ice giants and those guys. But that's actually a misnomer, that's not a thing the way you think it is. But yeah, so much like the ice giants, or those fuckers, the gods are a race of beings called Aesir. So again, that's another way of bending the word. It sounds very different depending on how, in what context you're saying it. But in short, one god would be called one Aus. Like you could probably say it from like an ounce, but instead of the N, Aus.
Yeah, so Aus.
Yeah, Aus. That is one god. And it literally translates to an ace.
Yeah, so it's just like a form of one.
Yeah. Aus. And that...
So,
yeah.
So that makes me curious, because of course we hear All Father is like a very common thing. So that's like some of these words almost sound a bit like they're sort of got the all part in them.
Right, yeah, that's very dramatic.
So I was going to say, is All Father an actual thing? Is that an actual translation?
Alpha,
and obviously that's all concept is. But so what is the actual word that would be used instead of All Father?
Allfather. But I mean, we wouldn't really say alpha. Well, that depends on like, uh, I guess, the way you speak. You know, some people would just say alpha, whereas others would just say Odin. But that doesn't like alpha and aus aren't technically related. So like an aus is a god, and of course we have the female word for that for the goddesses, like the gods and the goddesses. We have aus and ausinia, but for sake of convenience, it's just an aus. And you have heard this before. I know that. Asgard.
Yeah, of course. That's
Yeah.
one of the most famous
Yeah.
sort of aspects of it to people that aren't familiar.
Asgard. That's taken from the word Ausgarður. Garður meaning garden. Aus meaning ace. So technically, Asgard should be called Garden of Aces. And the aces, I guess, are. I guess because that's how you would call that in plural in English. So the Garden of Aces, because the aces are the gods, and that's the translation. That's it. That's where it is. So Ausatru, that's the name of Norse mythology. Ausatru, true, literally meaning faith or belief. So ace, believing in the aces. Ausatru, and I know you can pronounce that because a bunch of people from different countries pronounced that for me the other day, where I was giving the exact same topic. So yeah, so that's kind of my. I hope you're following me on this.
Yeah, I'm still following. It's just like, yeah, I never really associated Asgard with the term garden, and like you generally don't like. It's more associated with almost like
they just take the fucking like instead of making it a bit more understandable, they hear the term Ausgarður and they're just like, oh, we can't have aus because that's the a with a weird comma over it, and oh, we can't say that, so we just call it as. Okay, fine. And then instead of saying Garður, you say Gard, because that's kind of similar and still sounds mystic. Like, I mean, you can call it Asgard, and I will continue to call it Asgard purely from the reason that that's where most people know it as. Most people refer to it as an Asgard, and which is weird because I want to change the way we talk about Norse mythology. Ausatru or Asatru. You would probably have an easier time of saying Asatru, right?
yeah, Asatru.
Yeah, Asatru.
So I have to wonder with some of these things when you're saying like with mutations of these words, do you think there would have been a time where it changes a bit based on where these people who are having contact with these faiths are? Because obviously there'll be the people who are actually trading with them on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they would have had a better grasp of these proper terms, and then it sort of would have mutated as it got like further away from these trade points?
I personally think that most of these integrations would have happened at a later point, as when like we have the Viking settlements in England. We took over your damn country twice. Think about that.
Oh yeah.
Then again, technically from Normandy, the Normans technically took over, and the Normans were technically descendants of the Vikings from a different struggle. Right, so technically thrice we took over England. So plenty of time. But like on a more serious note, yeah, I think when the barbarian horde is at your gates and is murdering your people, you want to be able to call him by the right term. Nah, I don't think nobody cares about that. Did you die?
No, I'm still here. I'm sorry, I thought you were breathing in to rev up for the next thing.
No. no. You're way too damn considerate. Like I was expecting somebody to like you can talk.
So,
You can.
so just backtracking a bit. The other thing I was curious about.
Mm-hmm.
So with a half, butchering it again probably. Was that always to like the full pantheon, or
Who?
were they ever dedicated?
What?
I was gonna say, did you, with your places of worship, were they ever like dedicated to certain gods, or was it just sort of to the full pantheon? Was it ever like were you ever like dedicated to one sort of aspect of the religion more so than others? Because I know that's like a sort of thing that is quite prevalent in Egyptian and Greek faith, is that there'd be people who are more so interested in certain
Yeah.
gods.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, we did have some temples, some temples dedicated to just the gods in general, and that would mostly be to Odin because that's top G. You know, if you have a generic temple, it's probably for Odin, and then you would have specifically like designed for certain other gods. Let me get a little bit into reenactment. So,
Yeah, I'm quite familiar with HEMA being historical European martial arts. So that sort of had some bleed over to what you practice, I would imagine.
yeah, so, well, technically, the thing that I do, we don't do HEMA, but HEMA is a good indicator. For example, HEMA, Historical European Martial Arts, they take the manuscripts of like of fights, of sword fights, like the descriptions, the illustrations, and such, and they practice actual, like what they would say is actual historical combat. And
I'd also say it's like based on a much later period than what
yeah,
you're talking about. It's very
exactly.
much during like the medieval period and
Yeah.
onwards.
Well, I mean, HEMA is also medieval. So, like, the Viking era, the Viking age, it's early medieval. It's predominantly early medieval. Like, yeah, technically, like I said, you have, like, the Normans and all those. That's all a bit later on, but it's still, like, okay, by, like, the mid-medieval period, the Vikings were all but, you know, integrated fully into English society anyway. So, of course, they did still. I mean, the Scandinavian people still existed, but the ideas of raiding pirates sailing along the coasts and murdering people, that those days were gone mostly. Um, the so
So does that actually have a dedicated name then? A bit like HEMA?
no, it's just general reenactment. Because HEMA is a very specific thing. Reenactment can be anything from like any time period and any culture in history. Like anything from like the American Civil War to like World War II to like the Romans. A lot of people like the Roman reenactment, and like the Mongolians and Egyptian. I haven't actually seen any Egyptian reenactment, but you know. So like, yeah, that's what reenactment is. We take things from history and sometimes reenact events or battles and such, and stuff. So one of the worst, if not the worst, time periods to reenact is, I'll give you. Can you guess what that is? I'll give you one guess what that is.
Well, I'm guessing it's the one we're talking about.
You would be absolutely correct. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's difficult to reenact the Viking period?
Well, I think you sort of explained it a bit before, and the stuff I know is like unlike this sort of later historical martial arts stuff and like some other forms where there was a focus on documentation at the time. A lot of what you get from Viking stuff, from what I understand, is sort of just from sagas and like other sort of stories rather than a manual as such.
Yeah, Viking reenactment. I mean, you have, like I said, you have Roman reenactment, and that was before, that predates the Vikings. But still, like the Romans, we have so many documents on the Romans, and like so much evidence. But the Vikings, Um, that's kind of the reason why it's dubbed. Well, technically, the entire medieval period is kind of dubbed the Dark Ages. It's not the Dark Ages because of how brutal it was, but it was dubbed the Dark Ages because there's a big blip in the historical record. Like we haven't found too much. Of course, like mid to late medieval, we find more and more, but like specifically like early medieval, like North European history, we just don't know too much. Like we find so little archaeological evidence, any kind of, because like, what is it really? You have bodies, you have wooden structures, you have weapons of iron, of wrought iron, and timber. You have clothing of linen. All of these things are organic, and all of these things they rot. So we have so few surviving evidence and manuscript, like surviving documentations. Like writing shit down at the time wasn't actually too too common. So sadly, we just don't have enough material to go off. So when it comes to Vikings specifically reenacting, we kind of have to take certain liberties. Like nothing over the top, but we kind of heavily rely on the realm of historical plausibility instead of historical accuracy. And what that means, instead of, historical accuracy is specifically a replica from a dig, a find, something you see in a museum. It's specifically, this type of cloth and that type of weapon that we have found, maybe even repeatedly, or just one-off, but it is found, it is an absolute evidence. That is historical accuracy when it comes to like clothing and physical gear, physical kit. But historical plausibility is more like, yeah, we know they had the materials and we know they knew how to do it and they had a lot of reason to do it, so it's reasonable to assume that they did it. And then you would test it in the modern world. You would test it in like the same conditions in the modern world, at least as far as you could go. And that's
it's a bit like with what you said. A bit with what you said earlier was sort of like this whole game you have to play sometimes of like, was something a genuine bit of kit for everyday use, or was it a ceremonial display piece or something like that? You have to think about, could somebody actually use this sort of thing?
Yeah. So like everything we find is so precious is from that period, because like we don't find too much of anything. Even the most boring of things, like tools, like shovels, and like anything from like rocks, bowl-shaped rocks, like curved rocks. That is a lamp. You would fill it with oil or fat, stick a wick in it, and light it, and you have an improvised oil lamp. And that's how we lit our worlds back in the day. And anything, no matter how boring it may seem, is so important to shed light on the day-to-day life in Viking culture.
Of course, you do get the occasional gold mines where you hit something big, and then that's like mental. It isn't. This obviously isn't Viking, but Anglo-Saxon. I don't know if you heard of the Sutton Hoo ship and helmet. Got like a really good find, like a well-preserved iron, like extravagant iron helmet and like ship hull. It's like just got lucky with where it was buried, basically.
In the Second War, right? It was found.
Yeah, just before, I believe.
Just
39.
Yeah, before. Yeah, holy shit. Yeah. I mean, I haven't. They made a movie about it, didn't they?
I believe so, yeah. But no, it's just like this sort of thing where it's just like a lot of luck with lot of archaeology is just luck, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's basically you just happen to put your shovel in the right spot and get something really good. But no, it's as you're saying, like with a lot of these materials and everything, it's like they degrade incredibly quickly, especially in the sort of climates they're found in.
Yeah. Like England is great for that. Like England is uh, like England is kind of like that sweet spot that you would want to be. Like to be fair, to be honest, I mean, to be honest, like it's not too damp all the time, like a jungle, but it's not too dry. As in, like, it's a great place for fertile land. It's a great place for farming, but it's not too bad for like, you know, oh, it's gonna rot your tools or it's gonna rust everything you have in a matter of days. Not necessarily. Like, of course, depending on where in England, but you know, in general, England is so much better uh, fertile ground. At least Iceland is. Iceland doesn't grow shit. That's we're a land built on fucking lava rock.
I think that's part of what sort of drove the Vikings to be the sort of adventurers they were. Was like the promise of like fertile fields ahead, sort of thing, weren't it?
Yeah.
The idea that you could quite easily sort of, if you can colonize an area and build up a settlement somewhere, you could be quite profitable.
Yeah. Do you have anything more to add?
No, I think in terms of heathens, I'm
Yes.
far more educated than I was.
Alright, that's amazing. But yeah, so just to recap Norse mythology, it's, what is it? Tell me.
You put me on the spot.
I did put you on the spot.
When I
Ace?
was going to say the Ace-true.
Asatru.
Asatru.
Yes. I mean, I would say Asatru, but you don't have to say that. Asatru. And so what am I if I am a follower and if I belong to Asatru? What am I?
You're a heathen.
I am a heathen. And that is
A
a
good
thing.
kind.
Yes, that is a good thing. There's no such thing as a bad kind of heathen. It's a bad insult, and it was taken from me, and I would like to start a petition to take it back. Take back the word heathen and apply it to Asatru, so you would know exactly what I mean when I say I'm a heathen and what Asatru is. So yeah, this has been the first episode of hopefully many to come, where I would get more into details about the actual religion. What it all is, who is Thor, and why is he the best top G. Well, I mean, I guess Odin is, but Thor's my favorite. And you know, all those stories. There are like a bazillion stories I would like to share with all of you. A lot of them are so interesting. Some of them are rather freaky, but I hope you'll stay and listen to them all.
Give us a goodbye in the old tongue.
The old, fuck. Now you've put me on the spot.
And here I was. I thought I gave you an easy out.
Yeah, no, because there's no phrase that we say like, at least not in like Old Norse. I could just say goodbye in Icelandic, but you know, that's not the same. There's no like phrase to speak like may the stars follow you wherever you are or some shit like that. We don't just vertu sæll og glaður.
Good enough for me.
Alright.